Welcome to my review and tutorial for Aztec Challenge for the Commodore 64. And this is going to be the first time I combine both a review and a tutorial into one video, since the footage of the completed game is only about 10 minutes long, 9 minutes long. And really there's not a lot of shit to say about the game, so I'm going to kind of combine both. So for this first part, all you have to worry about is either ducking or jumping. That's the only two things you can do. And there's only two different arrow heights. There's an upper arrow and a lower arrow. So if the upper arrow appears, obviously you duck. And if it's the lower arrow, you just jump. And that's it. The only thing that's kind of tough about this is that it goes on for a while. This game has no checkpoints or anything, so the sections can be a little lengthy. And, you know, if you fuck up, you do have to start at the beginning of the segment. You can tell you're getting closer to the end by the pyramid getting larger. Once it gets to a certain size, you're pretty much done with the level. The levels tend to end pretty abruptly, but this is one of the levels that has a clearer end than some of the other stages, where it just kind of seems to end randomly. But they all end after a certain amount of screens, I believe. So you could count the screens in this playthrough if you're not sure how far you got. In a certain section, the game does have unlimited lives, so you have infinite continues. So, you know, you can die as much as you want, but you start at the beginning of the last stage you got to. So now after either ducking or jumping, and that's really all you can do. So you'll get used to the rhythm after a while. After playing that for a little while, you'll start to get used to how to react to that. It shouldn't be too hard. This game took me about 35 minutes to beat the entire game, so it really wasn't too bad for me, but I can still be tricky. So for this stage, I found this stage to be easier than the first stage, a little bit easier. But it is still kind of tricky. Again, you only have two different things you can do. In this stage, you can either move left or right. That's all you have control of. You know, you automatically move up, similar to the previous stage where, you know, automatically run forward. But yes, all you can do here is move either left or right. And you just want to keep an eye on the top of the screen and try to get in the gaps. And, you know, if you can, try to avoid areas that have a lot of cubes falling, because some of those areas are really clustered and you'll have to do a lot of weird maneuvering to get through that. Or you'll have to space between two cubes like you saw me do there, which you're probably going to have to do sometimes. But the hitbox seems kind of big, so it is easy to get hit. I try to avoid the cubes as much as possible, just stay away from them, but, you know, sometimes you'll have to go in between a few of them. You know, it gets kind of clustered. So it's mainly just going to be practice and just, you know, moving left to right and just practicing basically until you get it down. This was another stage that only took me a few minutes to beat. The first two stages weren't bad for me, difficulty-wise. But of course, that's going to vary. I've heard this considered a very difficult Commodore game, but I didn't find it to be too bad. But I could see where it could be frustrating for sure. So for this stage, all you do is if you hold back, you'll stop in place. And if you press the other button, you'll jump. So what I like to do is when I go into a new screen, I like to hold back sometimes just to see what's coming up, and then I can move forward and start jumping. But it's mostly going to be just watching what's going on and just trying your best to react to it. There's really not that much to say. After a certain amount of screens, it ends, and now you're in this next part. Now, this I found to be the easiest part of the game. For this game, all you're really doing is I use just the high jump. I guess there is a few different heights of jumps, maybe 2 or 3 different heights of jumps you can do. But I just ignored all that, and I only used the high jump, and I was able to beat it. I just found that to be the most useful jump, so I just use that, and I just keep moving. I just try to jump whenever I see something, basically. You know, it was very easy. This, again, probably took the least attempts of any of the other games, so I think this was the easiest of the little mini games, if you want to call them that, or stages. You can see the hit detection is very forgiving in this stage, because I would land on top of the snakes and shit like that, and I wouldn't die. Normally it's one-hit deaths, or if you fall in a pit, you're dead, you know, things like that. It'll start you at the beginning of whatever stage you're on. But again, you have infinite continues or infinite lives, so you can just keep trying. And I didn't find any of the sections to be too difficult once you understand how they work. But I'll try to break down everything that I did that I found that was working well for me, at least in each section. like I said, there's not a hell of a lot to say about the game, including reviewing the game. I figured I would, combine all that into one video since there's really not a hell of a lot to say about the game. I like the variety of the game, and the control is pretty good. But it can be a little bullshitty with some of the hit detection and some of the jumping. And, there's a lot of surprise obstacles that are kind of like, you don't really have a lot of time to react because they're like right on top of you sometimes. So it can be a little cheap. For this, I say just follow the path that you see me take here. I think that'll probably work. It seems to be that certain tiles will kill you instantly. So I figured that out pretty fast just by playing. And I also saw a video of a playthrough of the game, which I kind of remembered vaguely. So that probably helped too. This is just an edited playthrough with all the deaths edited out. I did post the unedited version too, so check that out if you're interested. But this is edited. All the deaths are edited out so you can just see how it looks to complete the stages properly. Now for this stage, all you got to do is keep swimming up, and when you pop up at the bottom of the screen, that counts as completing a single screen. And I believe once you complete a certain amount of full screens, this swimming game ends. So that's how I believe it works. And if you press the fire button, you'll get maybe a second or two of invincibility, where you can maybe dodge the piranhas if they try to rush you. Normally, the piranhas will try to rush you and they'll kill you instantly. They swarm on you, which is a pain in the ass. And I don't always understand how it works because sometimes it seems like they just hit me for no apparent fucking reason, Kind of random to me. But, I mean, I'm sure there's a way that it works. But the main idea is just keep swimming, all the way to the top and then through the bottom and just keep doing that and keep an eye on the piranhas. While you're at the top of the screen, you want to be looking at the bottom of the screen because you're going to be coming up on the bottom. So just be aware of what's going on and try to, just try to move around them the best you can and keep moving up while moving left to right to try to move around everything. Now this I would describe this stage as kind of a rhythm game because the way it works is you have 3 different jump heights. You can do a very low jump, a medium length jump, and a high jump or a far jump. And the way you determine which one you're going to do is by how many spaces you see, how many empty spaces are on the bridge. So when you see 3 or more empty spaces, you want to do the high jump. When you see 1 space, you want to do the lowest jump. And if you see 2 spaces, you want to do the medium jump, which is the middle jump. And that's really all this is. Now, aside from that tip, you want to do your jumps a little bit early. You don't want to wait till you're at the very edge. And there's a few reasons for that. If you try to jump at the very edge, when you land on the other side, you may be a little bit too far off and you may just fall off into the next hole. So you want to do them a little bit early. You want to do your jumps maybe like a few panels early. You can see where I'm doing my jumps. That's about where you want to do them at, just a little bit early. And aside from that, it's just a sequence that goes on for a while, but it's basically like a rhythm game because, you press the button that corresponds with the amount of spaces. So, like I said, if you see just 1 space, then do the low jump. If you see 2, do the middle jump. And if you see 3 or more, do the far jump or the high jump. You just have to figure out which buttons correspond with what types of jumps. It does tell you in the beginning the controls for each of these little stages, but it didn't seem to correspond that way on my controller. But once I figured out what each length jump was, short, medium, and far, I just had to remember, I had to pay attention to how many spaces were on the bridge. So that's really all this is. And it's pretty easy. It just goes on for a while. I think it goes on for a few minutes, so it's easy to mess up. But after doing it for a while, you should learn the patterns. You have a decent amount of time to react, and none of these mini games really speed up or get more difficult. So once you learn the patterns, it's just a matter of dodging everything or performing the jumps for a long enough period of time to beat the stages. They kind of end abruptly, but I believe they have a determined amount of time and a determined amount of screens. But yeah, now for my review of the game, I would give it a 6.5. I think it's a pretty decent game. Not quite what I would call a good game, but for a Commodore game of the time especially, I think it's pretty decent. It's pretty solid. It has a nice variety of mini games, but it is kind of taken down a little bit by having some of the hit detection can be a little weird. Sometimes you have shit that pops right out at you. It's not always the best gameplay. But the variety is pretty good, and it's pretty decent. I think it's a pretty solid game. After you beat it the first time, it does loop. And I'm not sure if the second loop gets harder, as I only just did one loop because I just wanted to beat the game. But yeah, overall, I think it's a pretty decent game. Let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for watching.